Want to expand the reach of your content? Start a podcast. Feature industry experts on your show and leverage the influence and reach of your guests to grow your brand. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with Robert Toler. He is the marketing director at Creative Chemist. Robert, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, James. Yourself?
I am wonderful, man. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today, Robert. We're going to be talking about the pros and cons of using do-it-yourself tools versus freelancers versus agencies. So I think a lot of the people listening to this are going to be interested in this content. So before we do that, I'd love for listeners to understand kind of why you're the guy to be talking about this. Can you talk about what you and your team are up to at Creative Chemist?
Sure, for sure. I've been doing this as a freelance designer for about 15 or more years. In the last 10 years or so, we've kind of changed over to doing marketing and helping a lot of startups and entrepreneurs. So we deal with a lot of the small businesses and helping them get up and running, finding leads, setting up their marketing plans and their programs, doing their creative, getting their graphic design together. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is really just simplify business's most abstract challenges, right? Marketing and creative are very abstract, kind of nuanced subjects and things for owners and even marketers to get into and understand. There's such a plethora of tools and options and techniques out on the market that it's just helpful to understand what's out there and what some things may or may not benefit you with. So that's kind of what we do. We're a full agency marketing firm, but we like to do a lot of the creative design and mix the creative with the marketing. A lot of firms do one or the other. We try to mix them together. So that's kind of what we're about.
Wonderful. So Robert, we've got a lot to cover. So let's just jump right into the pros and cons of each of these things. So we're going to talk about do-it-yourself tools. We're going to talk about freelancers, and then we're going to talk about agencies, and we'll go over some pros and cons of each of those. So as we dive in, we'll first talk about do-it-yourself tools. What are some of the tools that you're talking about whenever, some big ones out there?
Well, you got Canvas and some of those out there. I think, you end up with your MailChimps. It depends on what kind of marketing you're trying to play with. In MailChimp, you're trying to design some type of an email template. You have your Facebook options out there as well for all your social media graphics and so on and so forth. And those are great tools. They offer you the availability. I think the biggest plus to those tools is their cost, right? They don't cost a lot of knowledge, right? Their learning curve's low. You can get in there. They have templates that's already set up. You can apply designs that's already been made for you, stock photography, even some stock messaging and so on and so forth. So I think some of those tools people are aware of and use, especially on the small side, right? In these startups and entrepreneur situations, they don't have the budget or the capital to go out and get agency level work. So that's the great side about those tools is they're available immediately out there on the market. You don't have to wait for any feedback or any management, little learning curve, and you can get right into them and start making stuff happen.
Love it. Awesome. So what's the downside to the DIY tools?
Obviously, it's that because you're working with templates and because you don't have a professional on your side, you're winging it. Right? You're going off of some of the tutorials or some of the blog posts that you've read or some of the searches on Google that you've done to try to find out the best ways and techniques. But at the end of the day, what happens is you're kind of subject to their structure, right? To their templates and some of the things they're doing, and you don't get the expertise of the professionals. So the downside is that you don't get that insight. While the cheapness is great, the inexpensiveness of those tools are great. Sometimes it helps to have a little bit of that expertise. So that's the biggest downside to those is sometimes I think, one of the problems owners and marketers have, I think, is they just want to get it done. So they kind of follow that rule of, if I like it, it's good enough, right? They don't think about the coloring, the positioning, the sizing, how that message is being displayed, right? So those things are very important when you're talking about those tools, and that's the big downside of those.
Okay, so let's move to freelancers. So, using Upwork or sites like that to find maybe some design freelancers. Talk about kind of the upside to going that route.
Well, obviously they're readily available, right? You can jump on Upwork. I think Outbound or what's it turned into outsource is turned into remote.com recently, I believe.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of services out there that allow you to get some freelancers. Now, the problem is, at this day and age, everything's so automated, and Adobe and all these programs making it so easy for people to do Photoshop and all this. You have a tendency to find freelancers that may think that they are actually freelancers. They're actually designers, and they're on these networks, and they've got a couple years of experience. They talk well, but they don't produce well, or they've got great work, but they don't work well on the back end. So the great thing about these freelancers that are available, and generally speaking, they're in the middle budget, right? They're on the low end. They're not as expensive as your free agencies or your agencies, but they're not as expensive or as cheap as your do-it-yourselves.
Yep, got it. Okay, so the upside being affordability, the downside being sometimes lack of experience, the quality of what you're going to get may not be there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing people need to watch for when you're doing freelancers is the biggest complaint I see is design's real easy, right? You can see the end result. It's unlike accounting or anything else. You can kind of see the result of what's happening and say, I like that guy's or that girl's designs, but the problem isn't the result. It's how they got to the result, right? It's the process in which so you need to be asking questions of those freelancers like, what is their process? Do they use a project management tool? What is their turnover time? Some of these questions talking about their process and not the end result is the most important when hiring freelancers, and that's where people get caught up the most.
Got it. Okay, so we've talked about the DIY tools, we've talked about freelance networks. Now talking about agencies, let's talk about the pros and cons of working with an agency to get your these creative assets for your brand created.
Agencies are great. They know what they're doing. They're paying good wages to good folks. They've had success stories. That's why they are large and operating at the scale that they're operating on. So you can trust that, on the plus side, they know what they're doing, right? You don't have to question, like you do in the freelance world, if the guy knows what he's doing and having to produce something to see if that actually works. So they've got their experience on their side. And as well as they've got talent, right? Because they've got the capital, they can go get the talent. So generally speaking, while you can find some really great freelancers out there, it's a needle in a haystack, right? You're always going to fight to try to find those. The agencies have those guys readily available, hiring them all the time and keeping them on staff and ready to work on your project. So that's the great thing about agencies.
Got it. Okay. And so the downside to agencies, beyond the obvious of they're obviously really expensive, or can be really expensive. What are some of the other downsides that you've seen?
Well, sometimes it can be that turnover. It depends on the agency. If they're smaller, usually they're not using project management systems. They're still email based or phone call based. They use spreadsheets or so on and so forth. The bigger ones use some nice project management systems. So when you're looking for an agency, make sure that they ask the same kind of questions you're asking to freelancers, right? Their process. You can tell that they do good work, but are they going to be a good fit for your company and the way they work? Sometimes agencies want a lot of touch, right? They want to talk to you every other day. They want to ask questions, get your confirmation, get your approval. Other agencies know what they're doing and kind of tell you up front that and basically script what they're going to do and get it done and come back with the results. So it depends on how much engagement you want. So you kind of want to ask those questions as you're looking for those agencies. I think those can be a plus and a minus depending on who you are and what you're trying to do.
Got it. So Robert, you've obviously spent the last 15 years doing this. You mentioned you were, a freelancer, and now you've designed the service for Creative Chemists to kind of fit along, to fit nicely within those three, kind of DIY, the freelance networks, and the agency. Talk to us about how you've designed your service to kind of weave in between there.
Well, obviously, anybody that is in the business, if you're a marketer, you kind of know what we're talking about here, right? These DIY services and the freelancers and the agencies. What we're trying to do is just kind of fit in the middle, right? We're trying to give you agency level quality work and service for more or less agency level pricing, right? We understand that the tools and the technologies out there make all of this much easier. So there's no sense in us charging you $125 or $90 an hour to try to get some work done. So we try to make, the creative packages and bundling with your marketing, effortless and seamless. And so with that, we try to just fit seamlessly in there with the cost as well as ease. We're trying to simplify this for you at the end of the day. Got
it. So it's essentially a more affordable version of the agency, the agency part of what we just talked about.
Right. We use a project management tool, and you have dedicated designers and managers here to help you work through some of your marketing efforts, right? We just don't want to make something pretty for you. What we're trying to make something, it generates revenue for you. So when you put stuff up on your social media outlets, or you're putting them in your emails or in your print ads, that they're not just making you look good from a branding standpoint, but they're actually helping you sell.
I love it. So, Robert, if there's somebody listening to this, maybe they're looking for they're looking for something like this, or they just want to dig deeper on your thoughts on pros and cons of these different tools. Maybe they're trying to figure out, and they're early on. They're trying to figure out: do we want to go DIY? Do we want to go freelancers? Do we want to use an agency? And they just want a third party to kind of bounce some ideas off of. What's the best way for the folks listening to this to connect with you? And then also, you've got a custom landing page that you've built for specifically for B2B growth listeners. Share that with us as well.
Sure. Honestly, I'm a no sales pitch kind of guy. If you like what we do, I'm more than happy to help. If you just have questions, we might not be the fit, but if you want to just talk and go over some of this, just you're starting off, you just don't want to waste money or time and searches on the Google, go ahead and give me a call. You can get me at LinkedIn, so linkedin.com/in/Robert Toler. Toler is spelled Toler. And I'm more than happy to talk to folks. You can hit that landing page that you mentioned at www.chemist.agency/B2B growth.
Love it. And that's no dashes in there, just chemist.agency/B2B growth. And you can check out how you can stay in contact with Robert, with Creative Chemist. Robert, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time and sharing this with our listeners. So thank you so much, man.
Hey, no problem. Take care, James.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you'd like to connect with B2B executives from all over the world, make sure to join our private Facebook community. There are some incredible conversations happening inside this group. To join, visit b2bgrowthshow.com/FB.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.